Hello, hello, everyone. We're almost ready to start our last class in this fun little boot camp, kind of.
That's right.
There we are. So Aubrey is back this week, thank goodness. I know you guys can't see her, but she's on the back end doing all the important stuff, making sure that we're on the right screen and we can be heard.
Yep. And when you have to do it yourself, or actually when Sarah has to do it herself, since we switch things, I don't really know what we're doing.
It's a little more frantic, but that's okay.
It's a little stressful, but you did
it. It's fun. And if you guys were here last week, do you remember we had like a tornado watch and the weather was terrible? And today it's 75, I think, and sunny.
It's perfect.
Beautiful. So
perfect day.
What a difference a week makes. Aubrey comes back and the weather gets itself together. Okay, so we're just going to jump right in today. This is class 4 of our Quilt in the Hoop 101 series. And this class is very important. We have a lot of information. This is basically, now you know how to make your blocks and you know how to get beautiful satin stitching on your blocks and when you use water soluble thread and all that stuff. You know the best way to trim your applique. But how do you put those blocks together? That's intimidating to some people.
Because at this point you have a pile of blocks.
Right. You gotta, what do I do with these? Yeah.
Yep.
And how do I trim these? How do I use this? What's this trimmer by George contraption?
Yeah. Why do I need it? You know, why can't I just use my rotary cutter? All those kinds of questions.
Yes.
So we'll hopefully answer those today.
So that's where we're going to start. Actually, is with Trimmer by George. We want to give you. Some of you have probably heard our backstory on Trimmer by George and kind of where it came from, but I know some of you haven't, and it's a fun story because how it got its name is actually from George. So you want to go ahead and share that story?
Yes, absolutely. We had a sweet, sweet couple. Actually, their names are George and Martha. And Martha would test sew our designs, and she'd read our instructions and make sure that everything was absolutely perfect and that it made sense. Because sometimes what I write might make sense, but what you read may not make sense to you. So Martha would go through all those with us, and she was doing the double wedding ring. And when she got done with the double wedding ring, the instructions were to remove the bolt from the seams. So she had to take a scissors and cut away the battleizer and the fabric on the back. And as you can imagine, there were a couple blocks where she actually clipped into where you need to be sewing your seams together. Which after you spend all that time making a block, you really don't want to do that.
Right.
And she tried a rotary cutter and ruler, same results. You know, one would be okay, and the next one she'd end up slashing right into that. So the cool thing about George is he would sit there and he'd help Martha. He'd read the instructions to her and help her out with it. You could see her frustration building. So George was a former tool and die maker. So he actually went out into his garage/workshop and he invented the Trimmer by George. He basically,
you want me to show them?
Go ahead and show them.
So this is the very first version of the Trimmer by George that he made.
Yep. And it's basically a piece of aluminum gutter material that he had a little machine where he could crimp the edge. And that's how we got the crimped edge on our original Trimmer by George.
And he made the original ones that we sold.
He did. Right? He made them. Martha printed the labels and they'd adhere the labels to them. They put them in a little bag and they'd bring them over to Linda, my partner in crime, co-founder in Hoop Sisters, and she would take them over and then they would be distributed from there. But the funny thing is when they brought the first one over to Linda for her to try out, she's holding it in her hand. She actually used it. And the light bulb went off. But she's so excited, she then called me. And this was so long ago, there wasn't FaceTime. You couldn't do a video and text it to somebody.
Yeah.
I feel old.
So you're like, what?
Yeah, so she's explaining this to me over the phone, and I did not get it. I didn't have a clue what she meant until I got my hands on it myself. And it was a game changer because it protects the fabric on the front. It keeps you from slicing into it. and you can just use your rotary cutter, and it's so much quicker and safer.
So Heather Bell said she still uses this one.
Hey, you know what? It's awesome. It still works.
Paula Feely Green said she has this one.
Yeah.
I wonder if they have some of the updated ones because it's been through a few iterations,
That's right. So that's the original, and then we had a 2.0, and now we're on to the 3.0. And basically the difference is, I'll show you the 2.0, and if you still have the original or the 2.0, you're all set and you should be good to go.
Yeah, they work well.
Yep. So this is, I don't know if you can see it because it's clear. But basically this is, that's a little bit better.
Yeah.
This is our 2.0. So basically we still have the crimped metal edge on there. And what we did is we had an acrylic ruler attached to it. That way it gives you double duty. You can still trim away the bulk and the seam. And then you can also cut with the ruler itself. The problem that we had, and something that we wanted to correct on this, is that this was the material that made that crimped edge. You had to be real careful with it. So our 3.0 is basically, it's still acrylic ruler, but the metal edge on it is actually a lot sturdier. So that's what you get with the 3.0.
You can just see the reflection out the window.
Oh. Do you want it make a difference with the paper?
I don't know. You can try it. But yeah, I love this, and I use. Oh no,
not really.
I love this thing, and I use this for pretty much everything. I don't use my large acrylic ruler really anymore.
I really don't either. It's very rarely that I have to get out my big long acrylic ruler. I will tell you that when you use the trimmer by Georgie, you do have to have a 60 millimeter rotary cutter, and that would be one that is this size. And that is just simply because the metal edge that protects your fabric on the front, it raises that ruler up a little bit. So you have to have a little bit bigger rotary cutter.
Yeah, and it even says on the front of this, I don't know if you guys can see that or if you're just getting a reflection. I don't think you can, but it says that you need a 60 millimeter rotary cutter.
Want to talk about this?
Yeah.
I just think,
yeah.
So now we're going to show you how to use this here in this video as we get towards the end. But one of the things I wanted to also point out is that on the packaging of it, you're going to see there's like a QR code that's right there on the front. That QR code is going to take you to a video, another demonstration video, so that you can watch over and over and over again until you fall asleep how to use the trimmer by George, and we get into a lot of detail on how to use it.
And most of our instructions, not our older instructions, but our instructions since a year ago, they have that QR code on there. So it'll tell you, in words how to trim. But if you're going, what are they talking about? Or I want to see that demo again, that QR code will take you there.
Videos are great. You have to see it. And then this is the front with that QR code. There's a second QR code on the back. And if you can see that cute little trimmer case that is shown there, Sarah actually has it in her hand. But this is a free design that you can download from our website. And that way you can make a cute little trimmer case in case you're going to class or somewhere that holds your trimmer.
Very cute.
It holds the trimmer 3.0 because they're all slightly different sizes. So.
Yeah, so this is cute, and this is, you said it's free on our website.
It's free. You can download it for
so
free and make it. And, so that is exciting. It's also a lot
I've
of fun.
seen some comments, people saying, what is this quilt behind you? Or that's Carly, that's what I want to do. So if you hang around until the end, we'll tell you a little bit more about this, especially if you have purchased Quilt in the Hoop 101. You might get something special in your email soon. So stick around.
So watch your email.
I don't know when that's going out. Aubrey knows that. She knows all those secrets. So just thought I'd throw that out there while I see some of those comments.
So do we miss anything about Trimmer by George?
I don't think so. We are going to demo all this at the end. We're just kind of talking through a little bit of it right now. So obviously after you trim your blocks, then you want to join your blocks.
Right.
We're going to skip past that for what we're telling them right now. And then we're going to go back to it. But
this is like a movie where you're going to have flashbacks and flash forwards. So, okay. Hang on.
So now we're going to talk about sashing and how to prepare sashing. So one of the things about our Trimmer by George that I don't think we said was that it does have, and oh goodness, you can kind of see it. Mom, can you point to where that sashing and binding
be this line
Yes, so-
right there. It's at 1.5 inches.
And then the other thick dash line is for binding. That's another great thing about these trimmers because they have those guides on there. So I never need to go, what do I need to cut that again?
Right.
And I don't need to look it up. I just go, oh, it's right there.
You and I probably remember because we do this every day. But if you don't do it every day, and you like, okay, now what's in your flipping through all the instructions trying to find out how I could cut that sashing? It's right there on the Trimmer by George.
So that's perfect. So you'll use that guide on your Trimmer by George. You can cut it to 1.5 inches. And then what you do is you'll just follow your supply chart to find out how many strips of fabric you need to cut to that. And then you're going to join them end to end with a diagonal seam, which is kind of what you can see here. So I've got these joined end to end, and now when I open it up, you can see it'll lie straight.
And it's nice to do the diagonal because what that does is it keeps all the bulk spread out rather than folding and pressing your sashing strip and having that bulk all appear in one section, especially if it happens to be over a seam on your quilt.
Yeah. So I'm just going to cut this really quick to show you kind of how I'd prepare it a little more. So I just cut off that extra. I don't like that I can't see myself in that camera. I'm like trying to look. So now I've got this. I cut off all that extra, and then I just take this over to my ironing board and press my seams open. And like Annie said, that'll just help disperse some of that bulk a little bit more in there.
So shall I tell them what you do after that?
Yeah.
After you get your ends joined on your sashing strips and you join them on the diagonal and cut it and press them, then you're going to take your sashing strip and you're going to take it and I always have to figure out the words to use. Turn it towards the back so that the wrong sides are together so that the raw edges meet in the back. So it's just like this. Hopefully you guys can see this on the camera.
They can.
They can. Okay. So that's how you press it. And this is your sashing strip that's all ready to go. And the purpose of this is to cover the raw edge seams on the back of your quilt that you joined together.
And again, we'll demo all of that so you'll be able to see kind of how we're doing that live. But when you apply it to cover that seam, cover those raw edges, what I like to do is I like to put a monopoly thread in the needle and in the bobbin. I don't know if you do it any different. You might use a thread that matches your sashing fabric in the bobbin.
I have used a thread that matches the sashing, but I have had a couple of times where I've had really dark sashing and a really light front, and sometimes that thread will show through to the front. Yeah. So if that's your situation, you might want to go with Sarah's route and do monopoly in the bobbin and also in the needle.
That's just kind of what I tend to do for everything now.
Yeah, it's just easier.
Yeah, just wind your bobbin really slow with that monopoly, and for me it winds fine and works great in the bobbin.
That's right.
So let's see, where else are we now? Now we're on our demo. We have to take notes during these tutorials and these lives, otherwise we would be so confused as to where we're at.
We do not want to forget anything.
So what we're going to do is, Aubrey, do you see any questions that we need to answer before we go to a demo?
I don't think so. I think they're just excited, but no questions that I can see. But if you guys have some, pop them in and we will answer.
Okay. I do see that Deborah over on YouTube is saying, I don't understand the sashing part. You showed a quilt last week that looked kind of like a window pane. If you don't want that look, do you just keep the backing fabric the same for sashing? Yes. Yeah, Deborah, you can you can match. I actually didn't hang up
what we got back here. That's kind
Let
of
me
what
show
we
you,
did
Deborah.
here.
Yes. So this has a matching fabric. So it blends in a little nicer. But yeah, if you want that decorative look where I think I showed you Mystery Quilt from last year.
That does not
like
blend
this,
in.
then you just pick different fabrics. Or you can back your quilt in larger sections with one fabric and have fewer sashing pieces. Or for something smaller like this, you just add one piece of backing fabric. And Deborah, we're gonna walk through a demo right now, and we'll do trimming, joining, and sashing. What else am I forgetting? I think I got everything. So while we do that, Annie is going to walk you guys through, she's gonna share 2 pages of our course guide for this week with you guys, because I think it really demonstrates tricks for pinning well, and then we'll still show you that live. So let me go to this one. Oh, Aubrey beat me to it.
She's so fast.
Thank you, Aubrey.
She's not doing anything else, so she's not multitasking. Well, she might be. She might have
she probably
distractions and stuff. Okay, so one of the very important things about sewing your blocks together is you first have to pin them together. So one of the things that you need to keep in mind is that you can't take your pin it through this block that has your batting and your front and back fabric, and then again through another block, because if you did that, as soon as you bring that pin back through, it's going to cause those blocks to shift, and that way, and when they shift, you're not going to have them sewn on there correctly. So what we like to do, Sarah's rearranging everything. So we have a special way that you need to pin, and so when you're going to pin, the first thing we like to have you do is take a pin and find a match point. And by match point, I mean, for instance, the basting stitch that goes around your block. There's 4 corners. So the corners that you're going to join to another block, you're going to put a pin straight through that match point on your first block, and then through the identical match point on the next block. You're going to then do that on the other corner too, but you're just putting the pin through, and we'll show you in a minute. You just put the pin through, but you don't bring the pin back through the block. So these are just kind of like your match point pins. And this particular quilt has a lot of quilting lines, straight lines that go through it. So you might want to find a couple other lines where you can find another match point, excuse me, and put the pin through the match point from one block to the next. So now your pins are just coming straight through the block, but they're not coming back. Once you get those match point pins in, you're then going to take another pin right next to it, and you're going to put this pin in through the seam allowance, not through the block. And then when you bring the pin back through to hold it all in place, then you're going to bring it in through the block. And then you'll just do that right next to all your match point pins, and then you can take those match point pins out. And we'll show you, because sometimes someone talking about it is never as good as someone actually demonstrating that for you.
That's so true. But we wanted to share this though, because these photos in here I think are really good examples of it. Especially if you guys watch the demo, and then you can go back to your course guide and reference it if you want to see a little bit more.
Right. So then once you take those match point pins out and your other pins are in there, then you can sew right on the basting stitch, and you remove your seams as you go, and then you can press your seams to one side and alternate your seams on the blocks that are going to join it. But I will tell you also, I just want to say that for pressing, if you ever have a block that has a lot of applique that spills into the seam, or a lot of extra bulk, sometimes it's hard to get that seam to press to one side. It's okay to press that seam open. We can break the rules, that's okay. But this is a technique that you will use for pinning all your blocks together. And then when you do your rows of blocks and you're sewing those together, you'll use the same technique, and you'll use a match point pin through every seam when you're sewing your rows together.
Okay. So I think now we are going to move to our demo for trimming. Thank you, Aubrey. Okay, so this is a little block that I stitched out. This is just from the very first week. I think we called this our basic block. And now we are going to trim it. So how you trim your block, which way do I need to move it? There we go. How you trim your block kind of depends on how you trim your block depends on the location of your block in your quilt. So if this block has a block meeting it on all 4 sides, we would trim away the battleizer and the backing fabric up to the basting stitch on all 4 sides. If this block is in the corner and it's going to have a block meeting at the bottom and over here on this right hand side, we'd trim it that same way. But then if it has binding at the top and on the left hand side, you'll just trim a 1/4 inch through all layers. So that's how I'm going to demo this. Okay.
So basically any block that has, any side of your block that has going to have the binding sewed to it, you trim it a 1/4 inch from the basting stitch through all layers.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. So that's what I like to do that first.
I do too.
So that I
because I'm
don't
afraid
forget.
I'll trim away too much.
So I'm going to act like this is this side and this side. I'm going to go ahead and turn this and do that side first. And I still use our trimmer by George for that part as well. So I've got my trimmer by George with using the acrylic ruler side. I'm going to line it up at 1/4 inch from that basting stitch. Annie's laughing at me because where the camera's at, you guys need to get a good view. So it's a little awkward when you're trimming it sometimes. As you can tell by my repeated attempts. This is a new blade too. Okay, so I've got that side done at 1/4 inch. I'm going to do this side as though I'm going to stitch binding to it as well. So just 1/4 inch through all layers. That was better. Okay, now this is a side that's going to have a block join to it. So this is where I'll take, how do I show you, this crimped metal edge, and I'm going to lay it flat, shimmy it up under the fabric on the front of my block, and then I'll lay it down. Now I just want to visually make sure that no fabric is peeking out from the top, and I'll just gently tug on my battleizer to get it as close to the basting stitch as possible. And then with the 60mm rotary cutter, I'll trim away the backing and the battleizer. Now same thing on this side. So take that crimped metal edge, shimmy it up on under the fabric at the top of the block, and lay it flat.
So your fabric is inside here.
And you just want to look and make sure no fabric is peeking out, because I have definitely not looked before and I've regretted it. You'll slice into your block potentially. But yeah, it just protects that fabric. You can trim that away. And I've got all that bulk removed from the seam. Now I still need to trim, I should have used something other than white. I still need to trim the fabric on the top of my block 1/4 inch from the basting stitch. So we'll just take this awesome little tool and flip it over to the acrylic ruler side and trim that away.
Hey, Sarah.
Yes.
While you are trimming, Catherine has a question. So I think just some clarification. She says, by turning the metal point down, I think she means that crimped metal edge of the trimmer, is it better to not slip? So I think just more clarification for her on why you're turning it one way versus the other.
I'm not sure I understand exactly what you're saying. I'm thinking she's meaning when it's like this.
Yeah, so you have it that way, and then when you're trying to use the acrylic ruler side, you're flipping it. Do you know what I'm saying?
Okay, yeah, I'm doing that just because this has this little metal edge right here, and so it doesn't lay 100% flat in order to use the acrylic ruler side.
Perfect.
This side is touching, and it's easy to trim against this side, but this side would be a little angled in, and I wouldn't want to trim there. So when I turn it over this way, the acrylic ruler part just lays flat.
I think you get a more accurate measurement too by doing that.
Yeah.
Because it is laying flat.
Yeah. So here's the front of our block, and then we'll show you the back. So you can see where I've got my front fabric still on there, but removed that bulk. And then these are my two edges that I'll be sewing the binding onto. So there is trimming.
Okay, cool.
And next we are going to do pinning.
You're going to actually see the pinning instead of talking about
Yes.
it. We just wanted to do a little camera transition. That's
Yeah.
why we had to show you where to find that in your instructions.
So here are my 2 blocks that I prepped ahead of time. And I did go ahead and trim these 2 blocks as well. So what I'm going to do here, first what I want to do is I want to find my match points. Some blocks don't have many match points. Honestly, some only have 2 match points, so your corners. Your corners are always going to be match points. This block happens to have a lot of match points, which is a love-hate kind of thing, right? So each of these lines would be a match point on this particular block. What I'm going to do is I'm going to pin my corners, and then I'm going to pick maybe 2 or 3 match points within the center, you know, the middle part of the block, and pin those. So I'll just put right sides together. And I'll take my pin and I'm going to go straight through my block in that corner. And then I'm going to go straight through the corresponding corner on the other block. Grab a couple more pins. Now I'm going to go over to my next match point. So I'll just pick one of these quilting lines and I'm going to go straight through right at the basting stitch, just like that. And then I'm going to catch that other quilting line that I want it to match up with right at the basting stitch on the other block.
It's just like an anchor pin kind of.
That's right. I'll do 2 more pins. So again, straight through at my match point right at the basting stitch, and then straight through the match point on the other block right at the basting stitch. Last one in the corner. Okay, so we have all of these going straight through our block, and now what we need to do, these are, like Annie said, these are our anchor points. So now what we need to do is take a pin, and I'm going to go in through the seam allowance and then down into my block, and then I can go ahead and remove that. We'll call it an anchor point because I like that.
I couldn't think of that term a minute ago, but.
And then I'm going to just keep going, working my way down the block, and just pinning this through the seam allowance and then down into the block right next to that anchor point, and removing these pins as I go. So now I have all of my pins pinning my block together. And the reason, and Annie probably told you guys this, but the reason that we do that is because it's allowing us to pin our block really nicely at those match points, and we're not shifting the blocks as we're pinning down into them because we've got that anchor there.
Yeah, because you want to sew on that basting stitch and you want it to line up on the basting stitch on both blocks.
Yes. And so now I'm going to try to move the camera while I'm holding this. It's okay. Trying not to make you guys sick. And now we are going to stitch right along that basting stitch so that we can get these 2 blocks joined together. And again, I'm just stitching right along that basting stitch. And I'm going to slow my machine way down. You'll just remove your pins as you go. Almost ran that one over. So Annie, and probably most of you use the pedal for your machine to stitch.
That's
I
why
do
you
not.
slowed it down.
I do not. No, I disconnected it. I don't like to use that. It makes me nervous, and I'm standing.
So you did your start-stop button.
Yeah.
That's brave.
Okay, so there we've got it all stitched together, and now we're going to open it up, and this will be our moment of truth. Okay, so here is our block. So how did I do? Did I do okay?
You did great.
I think I did okay. So now our next step is to add sashing. I'm going to grab our sashing. Annie, would you do me a favor and would you go press that to one side? She's going to go and press the seam to one side on that block. And I'm going to change out some of my thread because we are going to apply the sashing to that. And again, I just like to use the monopoly in the needle and bobbin.
So I have a question for you, Sarah, and I've
Yeah.
never ever seen you guys use clips, but Denise, so I'm not sure how you answer this. You obviously prefer pins, but Denise wants to know, would using clips have a better advantage than using pins?
I'm not sure exactly what she means by clips. Do you mean like the binding clips? That's all I can think of. Do you know, she is asking, would using clips in lieu of pins work better?
You know, I don't think that you could anchor exactly where you want your blocks to line up by using
Yeah.
a clip. So I mean, honestly, you could still use your anchor pins to push all the way through and then maybe try a clip. But if you're not having success with it lining up, then you might want to go to just to using pins all the way through.
A couple people mentioned the word wonder clips. I don't think we've ever used them, you all. So give it a whirl. See what you think on some tests.
Is that what I use for my binding?
Yes.
Okay, so I use those clips just for binding. After you stitch the binding onto the front of your quilt and then you have to press it and get it to the back, I use those just to kind of keep my binding in place. I don't see a use for those in place of pins in this case for joining. I don't think it would hold it well enough.
Right.
I think it would shift a lot.
And I think also one of the reasons is that if you don't have an exact 1/4 inch seam from that basting stitch, that you may not have your blocks sewn together correctly when you get done. And just having that anchor pin in there, I don't know. I'm rambling on, but I really think you need to just stick with pins on that part of it.
Well, and I think I think we say this often sometimes, but I do think if that is something that you feel comfortable trying, give it a shot and see how it works for you. I don't think that I would prefer that method. I definitely like the pins. But it might work well for you. So give it a shot. And now if you are stitching your blocks together and they're not lining up, I would go back to the pin method and try that.
Do the anchor pin part and then try your clips and see. I wanted to mention a strip stick. I just pressed that seam to one side and I realized I think Sarah has a layer of wool in here.
That's okay.
So when you're pressing and you have a layer of wool, you don't want to just put your iron on that seam.
I'll show them this better when we switch back to our other camera angle because we're a little close up on this machine right now. But yeah, that wonder stick, you just and you can use a rolling pin if you don't have one. You just stick that under where you're going to press your seam, and it keeps you from flattening out your whole block, which I'm sure a lot of us have used wool before and then ironed our entire small project. I know I've done
that by mistake and forgot.
Yeah. So what we are going to do, and I am going, you know what? My bobbin with my mono poly thread in it, my clear thread, got all tangled. So I'm not going to use it. I've just got a blue thread in there. But this is what we're going to do. I'm going to apply the sashing, you put your block right side down. So I've got the back side up here. And you can see my raw edges. And then I've got my prepared sashing here. And I want to center this right over that seam. So what I like to do, and you can use Wonder Tape if you want to get it in the right place. If you're doing it for the first time, that could be helpful. I think after a few times, a little bit of practice, you don't really need it. So what I do is I just kind of align the center of my sashing right over my seam. Is my hand blocking the camera? Okay. Good. Right over the center of my seam. And then I like to fold it back. And I just check it. And where I'm going to start stitching on this is right at my basting stitch. Because this block will be joined to another block. We don't want to have that bulk in there. So I'm going to start right at the basting stitch. And I have I've chosen an elongated serpentine stitch. We don't say specifically what size serpentine stitch or anything like that. We just say elongated. So just use your judgment on what you prefer.
Janice had a question. Janice, hopefully you can hear me over the machine stitching. She wants to know, when pressing the blocks, do you set the embroidery design by pressing, or doesn't it matter and only do the seams? Just do the seams.
So now I'm stitching just along one side of my sashing fabric, keeping my needle mostly on my sashing fabric. And I stitch a little and then I lift this up and I peek to make sure that the center of my sashing fabric is still right over that seam, centered right over it. And then I go a little bit more. And I just peek, center it. And then I'm going to stop stitching right at the basting stitch again. Okay, so I have one side of my sashing applied with that elongated serpentine stitch. And now I'm going to start at the basting stitch and end at the basting stitch for this next side. And again, I'm just working on the other side, keeping my needle mostly on the sashing fabric. Okay, and there is, I'm going to move this camera back a little bit. Okay, there is our sashing fabric. Goodness, holding it too close. So there's our sashing fabric applied. And now what we'll do is grab a pair of scissors, and where you want to trim this is right at that basting stitch. So I just kind of fold this back and trim this away. This is because we don't want that extra bulk from the sashing fabric in our next seam when we're joining our blocks. So there's my final sashing, and there's the front. And now I did not use a monopoly. I used a thread that kind of matches my fabric. It's actually a little bit darker. It's just what I had on hand today because I got my monopoly bobbin all messed up. So with a monopoly bobbin, it would blend in even more, and I actually think it's blending in pretty nice with that.
It
as well.
is. It really is. It's very
So, yeah.
shocking. Can I just add something to
Yeah,
what you
please.
said? She was showing you where to trim. So obviously there's going to be another set of blocks sewn to both sides, and where she said you trim it right up to that basting stitch. There is an exception. If this was the edge of your quilt and there's going to be binding there, you would trim it to the edge of where your fabric ends.
Okay. Okay, I'm going to. Oop. Hold on 1 second. Are you showing more stuff right here? I was going to switch our camera angle up a little bit.
Okay. Whoops.
Is that okay?
That's okay.
Okay. I'm going to move this up here.
Okay.
And Annie, do you want to talk to them a little bit about just applying that sashing, starting from one end going to the other? And then the next page, if you want to go to that as well,
Okay.
is kind of showing if you have a larger quilt. I just put
Okay.
Annie on the spot with that.
She did, but you know what? I should be able to do this without even looking at anything. Okay, so she's talking about doing the sashing. So if you have a little section like this, and you can see where it's just like a 9-patch block quilt. So you're going to put all your vertical sashing on, and then you can do it across the other side, just like she did. And you will just let, like if you've done your verticals, then you're going to just, you can go ahead and just overlap your horizontal right over the top of your other row. Let's see here. What other? She's got a lot of detail here, and the papers that she has with your handouts. But you would just continue to do that. So then, if you have this section, and let's say you have 4 sections, as you see there in the picture, you now will just join those 4 sections together like you did block by block. And now the only raw edges you have are what you see in the middle, the darker sashing in the middle. And then you would just apply sashing to that, just like you did, like you saw Sarah do. And you just do your serpentine stitch down both sides.
And this, like what you see on the screen right here too, you can kind of see the 4 sections right there. So that's kind of what we're talking about when we say if you would rather back your quilt in larger sections at the end, and you say, I don't want the quilting to show through on the back, I'll just add that backing fabric after. If you look at those 4 quadrants, those are the places where I would kind of add backing fabric so you wouldn't need sashing in those quadrants. And then at the end, you'd join those 4 sections together and just need the more bold pieces of sashing. So now I think, Aubrey, we're going to switch back to Annie and I. Thank you.
I did pop a question up on the screen. I know you said preferred, but You want to get get in there a little bit more.
It was about stitch length on the serpentine stitch. And actually the stitch length, we don't really change as much as we change
The width.
the tightness of that, how it curves in and out. So
Yeah.
you can just change, I'm not sure what it's called on the machine.
Yeah.
But you're not really changing your stitch length, you're just elongating the stitch.
Yes, which is just making the width of your serpentine stitch more narrow, I guess.
Right,
So yeah,
right.
we don't really have a preferred
Stitch length or width or anything like that. But
Yep.
we can show you a close-up picture perhaps of that,
Maybe
so you
this
can
will-
see what Sarah did, what she used.
I don't think you can see
It's
it on
nice
that
matching thread.
I
There, that shows it
side.
better.
And I'm telling you, that pinning method, look at
Look
that,
at that,
guys.
right on the money.
And I don't know about you, but I feel a little pressure when we do this live. I'm like, I hope
I
get-
noticed you didn't let me pin it and then you sew it.
I called this section pinning like a pro too, so I really felt pressured. But that worked out well.
It did.
Okay, any other questions? Aubrey's quiet. It
She's
must be
very
in the
quiet. She
chat.
must be either
Not
reading or.
yet. Well, the last time I said no, someone popped one in right at that minute, so I was just waiting for her to be a second. I don't see any right now.
Yeah.
So then once you get everything sewn together and sashed, you put your binding on it, add a sleeve if you want to. And if you missed it last Friday, Sarah on Sew with Sarah on her YouTube channel had a, she talked or showed you how to put the sleeve on.
Yes.
And did you do the binding too? I don't remember.
I did the binding
Binding.
as well. Yes.
Yep. So you can go back to YouTube and find last Friday's Sew with Sarah episode, and you can find out how to put a sleeve and.
I don't show you. Someone had asked me this in an email. I don't show you how to finish the binding on the back. How I finished it. I believe I hand stitched the binding on the back of the sample that I did. You can do it in a machine if you like. I think it looks a little cleaner if you hand stitch it. So it probably just depends on what you're using your particular project for.
Right.
So yeah.
I popped
now
another
she's got a question.
up.
You could just use one material for the back. Yeah, so
Yes,
if you
sure.
wanted to, this we kind of covered a little more last week in class 3. But if you want to, you can take, so let's act like this is a quarter of a quilt, right? This is a quarter of a quilt. So I have joined my blocks, and this is actually my demo from last week. I've got my blocks joined together, and I didn't add the backing in the hoop. Hey, it's all here from last week. I did not add the backing in the hoop. So what I need to do is add it now. And you can add it in larger sections than just 2 blocks. This is just for demo purposes. So for example, I've got my backing fabric cut about 1 inch wider on each edge than my actual blocks are. And what I would do is I would just pin these 2 together, avoiding the seams. And then I would use an elongated serpentine stitch with monopoly thread to stitch in the ditch to secure these, and then just baste around the edges. And then if you're doing this with a larger quilt, like the ones behind us, you could do this in quadrants, and you still would have, your center seams to add sashing to, but you would not have to do sashing quite as much.
It's a couple different ways
What's
of
that
doing
one
it.
say?
Let's see. So, is there always sashing on your quilts?
I guess it depends on the size of them. Because
Yeah.
if you're doing a quilt this size, yes, there's going to be some sort of sashing. You're either going to have sashing, just like we said, between those quadrants, or you're going to have sashing everywhere if you want. I sashed all. I don't know why I did that. I did.
Well, let me go grab something that.
Our 3-block wall hangings, for example, like Hello Spring, that is a great.
No, I'm not going to show the front of
Okay.
this.
She grabbed a release for later this year for sure. But yeah, this is one of our 3-block wall hangings. This is just backed in one piece. So no, there's not always sashing.
No, and a lot of these larger quilts, I mean, you could do it in 4 or 9 or however you want, and that way
Yes.
you only have sashing between
You're
certain
making me
areas.
nervous holding that.
Okay, I'm gonna get rid of it. It was handy.
Someone says, I was late for this episode. Love the quote behind you. So if you were late for the episode and you didn't catch it, and you have purchased our Quilt and Hoop 101 design and course guides and everything, check your email, because you will be getting an email shortly that has a little bit of a deal on this quilt. So, because this quilt was actually the inspiration for our larger design for Quilt and the Hoop 101.
So these little fleur-de-lis,
Yep.
kind of inspiration for what she put in the
Yeah.
in this quilt. So. All right, see if there's any more questions here.
I know Aubrey has a little bit of information to share with you guys. There it is. So if Aubrey wants to go ahead and share now, and then we can answer any other questions that might come up.
I was just going to say, keep the questions coming though, because I have a couple announcements, just 2 little slides here, and then we'll go back into the questions. The email has not been sent yet. The email will be sent after the live. That way it will have all of the recordings, the 4 weeks of courses, and it'll have a special on fleur-de-lis, and that only is going to the people who ordered Quilt and the Hoop 101. By the way, I did see a question, how can I order Quilt and the Hoop 101? It's on our website, so just go to hoopsisters.com, and there's a tab sort of at the top left. It'll say QITH101. If you just click there, you can order it. And guys, it's just $32.99, and you get a wealth of information in those course guides plus the designs. Thank you. I think Nina Nina just popped that in there. Thank you, Nina. So the link to order it is there, and the email will go out after this recording so that you get all the recordings and the deal on fleur-de-lis, okay? But the announcements that I have, it's actually just one announcement, but I wanted to let you guys know, if you haven't seen this already, we do have a demo days coming up next Tuesday. It's actually next Tuesday and next Wednesday. So we're going to come live in this group at 2 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time. By the way, I'm almost 42 years old, and I just learned the difference between Eastern Daylight and Eastern Standard. So
I did too, Aubrey. It's okay.
You can teach old dog new tricks. Yeah, yeah. So you can join us both days. Day 1, I'm doing this with Linda. She actually did the design for the upcoming sunflower collection. You guys are absolutely going to love it. And day 1, which is Tuesday, April 18th at 2 p.m., she's going to be stitching out a block from a brand new design that you haven't seen yet. We're going to reveal it during this too. And then day 2, she's going to go through trimming and joining demo. So very similar to what you saw today, but on this specific sunflower collection design. So make sure you join us. We do suggest you register, and I'm sure Nina can pop that in the link or in the comments as well. If you register for this, you do get a free gift. The free gift will go in your account on April 18th. So it won't be in there just yet, but you'll get a free gift. We will also have limited time pricing and a really, really stinking cool bundle bonus. The bonus is something we have never done before, so it's going to be a little bit different. But I also wanted you guys to know that you register, you get that free gift. The registration costs you nothing. But if you register and you join us live, you have a shot at winning $10 in store credit. We're going to do it both days. So basically what that means is I'm going to be drawing names from the list of people who are registered. If you're on live and you've registered and I draw your name, you're going to win $10 in store credit. So just a little incentive to make sure you join us live so you can check it all out. Thank you, Nina. She popped in that registration link in the comments too. So I'm going to see if there's any other questions. We talked about how to order. The email links you're only going to get, again, for Quilt and the Hoop 101. You're only going to get those videos in your email if you purchase Quilt in the Hoop 101. So if you have and you're not getting the emails, maybe email Nina@hoopsisters.com. We'll just double check the email address we have on files correct. Let's see. Okay, so Nina already took care of somebody. Perfect. Yeah, if you love sunflowers, you are going to love it. And we got that in there. Does this apply to Canadians? The event? Yes. I mean, if Carol, you can definitely jump on this event. Even if you are in Canada, you're welcome to join us. And that's for Quilt in the Hoop or the Sunflower event. And the giveaway that you're going to win would be $10 store credit. So we'll just pop that in your account. So
pretty cool.
Oh yeah, somebody, and Peggy, Nina replied and said that you are on our list. Everything looks correct. So maybe check your spam or junk folder. I will tell you guys too, I am putting all of these videos in the product on our website. So if for some reason your email, email's weird nowadays, and sometimes they pop us in like a promotional folder. But if you just go to hoopsisters.com, go to the Quilt in the Hoop product, click on it and scroll all the way down. All the videos are there. They're also going to stay in our Facebook group. And they're all on YouTube. So they're everywhere. Like, you can find them. We'll help you find them. All right. Anybody else have any questions? Well, we got them here.
I bet we'll be here again next week.
I'm sure.
What did you say?
I said we'll probably be here again next week, same time. If there's other questions then.
But next week it'll be Sunflower Demo Days.
Yes.
That is true. Okay, sorry.
That's okay.
I didn't listen to anything Aubrey just said.
That's typical. Typical sisters not listening.
All righty. Well, I think that wraps up Quilt in the Hoop 101.
It does. And you gave them so much information and
Yes.
very valuable, and will help everyone be successful. So
yeah, this was fun, and I hope everyone learned a little something along the way, and
I'm sure they did.
Yeah.
So,
all right, guys. Well, we'll see you
next
I think
Wednesday.
Aubrey said next Tuesday.
Tuesday.
Yeah, we'll see you next week for the demo days.
That's right.
For the sunflower
That's
collection.
right. Don't forget to register for a freebie.
All right.
Don't
Bye, guys.
listen
Have a
to
good
Sarah.
day.
Just go to the website.
Yeah. Bye.
Bye.